Okay, so we are going to do some special weaving patterns and techniques with our loom or our board weaving. This is, you can see this loom has seen a lot of love and kind of fun because the warp is red and the beginning weft is this bright, fun blue. So the first technique that I'm going to teach you is called stripes. I don't think that is the official name, but that's what we're going to go with. This is what the weaving pattern looks like whenever it's finished. So this is what we're going for. And the first thing that you'll need to do is have two separate colors, and I have two needles just because I have an extra one available. But if you don't have two needles for this weaving pattern, then you can just use your fingers to lift the warp as you go. I've had students in the past who have used items like pencils to make their weaving easier, where they separate their warp like so. So it's really up to you. I'm going to use the example with my two needles. You need to have both of the colors that you're going to use for this weaving pattern ready. My green is taped to the back and my blue is already ready to go. So the very first thing that you're going to do, start your pattern with your first color, and now with my second color I'm going to do the opposite. So if my blue is under over, my green is going to be over under. So you're wanting to have that opposite pattern, and that's going to be the same pattern that you follow all the way across every time you use this specific color. So I'm pulling all the way across and then pushing up, and now I'm going to leave my green over on the side because we're going to come back this direction in a few moments. And so now it is my blue yarn's turn. So you can see at this moment that the blue and the green are going to have to overlap. You're going to have to do that to catch this yarn so that you can continue to follow the pattern. Okay? Turning the corners is a little different with this weaving pattern. I'm going to pull that, and you can see how it kind of loops with your new color. And this is a wider loom, so I'm having to, my needle's not long enough. So I'm kind of going halfway. Okay, pull all the way across and then push up. So now I'm going to leave my blue on the side and I'm going to pick up my green. And the green has to follow the same pattern. So we're going to go under. And you're like, wait, you didn't turn your corner, Mrs. Barlow. Well, you're right, but watch what happens. Because as I start to pull through, you're going to see that the green yarn is hooking with the blue. And that's how you're creating this turning of that corner and how it's not coming unraveled. So over, under, all the way across. Now at the beginning it doesn't look like much. You're like, oh, I'm just doing something more difficult. But as you continue, you're going to start to see how the stripes are formed, specifically if you go down a ways. So now it's my blue's turn and the pattern is over. So I'm going to go over. If you mess up on your pattern, you're going to see it immediately. When my oldest son used this weaving pattern in one of his pieces, he was like, oh, why does this look weird? He knew immediately that he had not done the pattern correctly. Okay, we're going to put the blue down, and now we're going to get the green. And once again, the green is starting over. Making sure you pull your weft all the way through so that you don't have any yarn straggling. Leaving our green on this side and now continuing with the blue. If your warp is pulling a little bit, just correct it. Okay, the blue starts with under, coming from this direction. And as you move your fibers up, you can start to see that design that you're creating. I'm going to continue on just a little bit further because my blue is almost out. And I will show you the next pattern or technique. There are so many. You could spend all day trying to figure out new weaving patterns, practicing, messing up, trying again. So it's just really up to you, and if you want to try something new, try something that's a little bit more difficult. Really, the weaving pattern is simple. It's the technique, because our weaving pattern is over under. It's using the two colors at once to alternate to create these stripes. And the reason why this is not as dramatic as maybe this example is because I had a different color at the top and bottom of this example. And on this piece, I had the blue and I just continued with the blue. So if you want something that's a little more dramatic in your weaving piece, then that might be something you need to think about. Maybe not starting with a color that you're going to be using. And look how this green is catching the blue. That's how you're turning the corner with this technique. And if the first time you try and it comes undone, then just try again. We might get one more time with the blue across. We'll have to see how we do. Two more times. I love how I continue to weave that my warp strings know kind of what they need to be doing. You can see kind of how there's certain ones raised because of the pattern. Okay, and this is the perfect example of not turning correctly. I absolutely left that entire piece out. So I'm gonna take my needle off. I'm gonna take a moment, just bring it back. And try again. Let's see if it worked this time before I get all the way through. Much better. Now I've developed a knot, so that came out easy. Under. Okay, and then one more time through for our blue, and then we'll start the next technique. So that was our stripe technique, and we created that with 2 alternating colors, and the alternating colors were going 1 row at a time, but their patterns were differing. So one was going over under and the other was going under over. Okay, so let's continue with this piece. And I do not currently want either of those colors. So I'm going to move down just a little bit and give myself a neutral. Let our eyes rest for just a little bit. And maybe you have seen some of the weavings around. Weaving is kind of popular again. And there's a lot of people, once again, who are kind of trying out new patterns and techniques. And the triangle, the circle, those are kind of popular to add into your weaving. I want to start with a slant. So to kind of give you an idea of how to even start making some different designs on your piece. So far, this has been pretty symmetrical, but once we start adding the slant, then it gets a little more asymmetrical and freeform. So I'm moving down a little bit because I'm going to slant up at this point. So I'm going to start weaving down below. I'm still going to do my under over the same that I've been doing. To start this technique. If you're getting confused about pulling your yarn through, if you can't go halfway like I just did, then don't pull through until you get all the way across. So I'm going to work back because I'm going to go up on this part. When I first started weaving, we just went from the top to bottom, and I never taught asymmetrical weaving. I just taught symmetrical weaving because my time was so short with my students. As I've continued to weave and learned new patterns, I've tried some new things, and so moving down, working back up seems a little strange or different maybe, but for what we're creating, you'll understand why in just a minute after we get it started. I also like that we're using white right now just to give our eyes kind of a rest from the bright pop of color that the lime green and this vibrant blue, cobalt blue, have created for us. Okay, I'm going to go one more time across before I start the slant. Don't forget, you can't leave your yarn over here. You have to pull all the way through. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my corner. Take a moment to get that out. Okay, so one way to start your slant, which could lead to maybe a triangle, or maybe just creating a new part of your weaving. Part of that could be just to push up. So I've done 4 rows with my white, and so now I'm just going to take my fingers and softly yet somewhat firmly, I'm pushing that up. Okay, so now you've created that angle, and as I continue to weave, then I'm going to follow that. Okay, so I'm going to turn the corner just as I normally would. And when you press that down, then you're just going to have that follow the angle that you're creating. That's one way to create interest. I've seen this called a wave before. To me, it's just a slanted angle, but if you wanted to create a wave, it would be a similar idea. You would manipulate or change the weft once you got it started by pushing some up and some down. And that's going to be really easy to show you in just a moment. So this white is going to continue following this angle that we've created. If the angle is not as severe as you want, then just keep pushing it up and bringing this down. And you can see it's not going to take much time to finish in this spot. You might get one more turn there before that space is closed. Did you see how my weft was up like that? Well, just make it follow the line you're wanting it to follow. Just push it down. Okay, turning my corner, coming back. Let's see if I get maybe 1, 2 more turns. Okay, so I can definitely turn 1 more. And then what would you do with this open space here? Well, you would fill it in with the same color. You could just keep weaving, or maybe you're ready to introduce a new color there. And I actually think I can get 1 more turn, so I'm going to try 1 more. Oh. And when your yarn does that, you could take some time and try to fix it, or you can just cut it. if you are running out of yarn, then please go by the public library and have them cut more for you. If you do not have a color that you want or need, you can always let them know, and more than likely I have it in my personal stash here. Okay, so I can turn my corner one more time, finish that, and come back with my white. So that is one way to add angles to actually angle your row or line that you're creating by just pushing up your warp, and so you have the straight going into that angle, and then you have this open space that we would fill in. And just for some dramatic effect, let's use black to fill in that space. Smaller areas, it's easy to try new patterns. So I might want this white later, so I'm going to tape it. In case I want to come back to it. This may not work for you. This is what has worked for me, and just kind of gives me the freedom to pull as I need, but also gets it out of my way. Okay, so now we're going to come back in and fill in this space with our angled area. I'm using the black. I want to see kind of what that does in this small area. And I think that I'm going to try something a little different. I think I'm going to come up and pull through, then back under to the next. I'm going to pull up, go under, and you can see that it's starting to wrap around each warp. Go under, now back around. So I'm going under 2, pulling all the way through, and each time it's wrapping around the warp that I just got finished with. So going under, and you can see that this one's not wrapped yet, so that's where I'm going to start. Go under 2, and it's wrapping 1. So this is the point where I start. Go under 2, pull through all the way, What I like about this is that it's kind of strenuous. You wouldn't want to do this in a huge space. So in this small space, or even to start with, it gives you a different texture and a different look. It's slightly raised from the other weavings that we've done so far. And once you understand the weaving technique that you're doing, it's not going to take you as long. This would be beautiful with a larger, fluffier type of yarn. This would also be beautiful with a pulled wool. I know that I have woven with some of that wool that's used for felting, and just to give a different feeling and textural look to the weaving. And that would be beautiful with this technique that we're using. We don't have much space here at the very top, so we'll get maybe across once. And the great thing about using the needle is that it kind of creates the space that you need. Sometimes you can also push up your weft that you've already used. To make that space. Okay, so we've gone all the way across with that. And now I'm just going to turn my corner and I'll come back down. I'm trying to keep my blue and my green out of the way. And because you've created this slanted part, then you're going to fill in the space almost like a wedge with that. And I just did a single weaving pattern coming back, but now I'm going to come back to this wrapping knot. And I would hate to call it by the wrong name, so I'm just going to not call it. If you are not interested in alternating the weaving pattern like I just did, then just continue. You can just do the normal weaving pattern over under all the way. These are advanced pattern weaving techniques for those of you who have been weaving before, or maybe you're just wanting a challenge, maybe you're wanting to try something new. Once again, my needle is kind of making the way for me in this tight kind of spot. I'm glad I have that. If I were using just the yarn in my fingers, it would be much more difficult. And finish that knot right there. So you can see that my wedged area is starting to really, I'm starting to lose space. How do I turn a corner when maybe it's starting to disappear? I'm just going to go under and pick back here where I can see my red warp. And going back this direction, I'm just going the single, I'm not wrapping or knotting. So I'm going to go over. Actually, I think my pattern was opposite of that, so I'm going to try to replicate what that was, so that my line, my warp designs stay the same. So this is what we have so far on our advanced weaving patterns. I'm going to leave the black where it is for now, and I'm going to jump down and work on this section for just a little bit. I'm going to show you one more technique today, and then you can come back later this week to find some other techniques that we'll be adding if you are interested in changing up your pattern designs beyond just the colors over, under, and such. So one more advanced technique would be to create a circle. So I have cut out of a flimsy cardboard a circle pattern. I actually just traced the inside of my tape, and this is going to help me create a roundness. You don't have to have a circle cut out. You can do exactly what I did earlier with the angle. This idea of weaving and then pushing the weft up works for not only angles, like if you were trying to create an angle for a triangle, it would work the same for the circle. Okay, so we're just going to, once again, skip down some because we're going to work from the bottom up. And using our normal under over pattern, we're going to start those rows. So if you needed to have the visual pattern of the circle, once you had a few rows in, you would start forming it. And then you would continue following that as you were weaving. So I would take this and press my weft up to follow that curve. I actually have to move that a little bit to get it where I need it to be. So to create that circle, just to have that visual, I just moved my weft to follow the curve of my circle underneath. So if you were interested in creating a circle, that would be the way you would get started, and then you would continue following back and forth, following that circle. This is also how you create the wave. So if you are interested in more of a wave idea where the weft goes, let me get it all back, goes up and down, then you would follow that same idea. So now as I continue to weave, my weaving pattern is still the basic over, under, but now I'm creating this wave or curvy pattern. This would also be the way, let me get my weft back, how you would create your triangle. So starting with I just started with 3 rows. And with the triangle, your angles are going to be more severe, right? So getting more of that point that you're kind of starting with. So bringing up your sides, but also maybe even pushing down that middle. So if you wanted to create more of maybe an arrow idea where you have the bottom part pointing down and the top part straight across, more like an arrow, then you would start your pattern design like that. If you wanted the angle pointing down and at the top, you would do the same here. So many different ideas and fun things to try out. You get started on it and you're like, oh, that is not what I thought I was going to be doing. Well, just undo it or just try it again. I've pushed this into 3 or 4 different kind of lines within a matter of moments to see what I thought would be best. And that's where we're going to stop today for our more intricate pattern techniques. We have our stripes, so technical of a term, but our stripes using 2 different colors alternating. We have our regular pattern weaving, but with an angle, kind of creating that asymmetry or that asymmetrical look. We have the pattern of filling in a wedge, going back and filling in the space. And I taught you the Egyptian knot, or a knotting pattern, where you go under two, come back over one, and it gives a raised, knotted kind of effect. And then I've also taught you how to add different types of lines or angles to what you're creating. So circles, waves, angles, so many different ideas that you can do whenever you, number one, try, and then maybe not go just from the top to bottom. Maybe you're working some in different areas of your weaving. Okay, come back tomorrow and we will try some other more intricate pattern weavings.